Hey there, welcome back to our Support Ops Hangout. This is our weekly podcast that helps you deliver a better support experience to your customers. I'm your host, Chase Clemens. On today's show, we're going to take a look at what you should already be thinking about for next year. But before we dive into that, let's go ahead and introduce all of you to our wonderful panel. Now, first up, live in the flesh, not in some random vacation spot, Jeff from Wistia. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Chase.
Good. That's going to be the tag now. It's like, is Jeff in a random vacation
Take
spot?
one
No.
vacation once, and this is how you get tagged for the rest of your life, so take into account, fair audience member.
Next up is Carolyn from Bufferland. How are you?
I'm good. This is my new Airbnb from New York City.
See, she knows how to vacation. Well, travel.
I'm miserable at vacationing, but I'm good at traveling.
And then guest for the show, Chase Livingston's out, but managed to snag Andrew Spittle from Automatic as well. You've probably seen him around here and there. So yeah, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me at the last minute here.
Yeah, it wasn't Jeff vacation last minute. It was like this morning last minute.
Oh yeah, I had like at least like 6 hours, I think. Totally worked.
Damn you, Spittle.
Oh, all right. This week, 2015 is ending. 2016 is right around the corner, and you're probably already looking towards next year. So we wanted to basically pick the brains of 3 different support team leads and managers just to kind of talk about the things you need to be thinking about already for next year, what things you should be planning for and all that fun stuff. So, Spittle, since you're the guest on this one, let's give you first dibs on it. So what things with the Automatic support team are you already thinking about for next year?
Yeah, so a couple of things, and they're basically things that our core focus for 2015 was like getting our live chat coverage better. The goal we set by the end of December was 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then we wanted to cut our email response times by half, which we're not super close on. We've cut them by like 10%. So what we're thinking about for 2016 are really the things that like we didn't get accomplished this year, or the things that we said no to deliberately this year. So the 2 big ones that we're already thinking about are weekend response times, and then just continuing to we have this really great live chat experience right now, but we still take 14 hours to reply to somebody over email on average. So we want to kind of bring those closer to each other so that the experience is kind of more consistent across the board.
So with live chat, you mentioned 24/5 was the goal. Did you hit that one?
We are very, very close. Basically, if our team members in Australia, Southeast Asia, and Europe kind of set some email tasks to the side just a little bit and push ourselves, we hit 24/5 right now. So it's not routine yet, but it's there probably 2 or 3 days out of the week.
Yeah, and then so with the weekend push, what's the thinking behind that? Why are you going to start looking at that next year?
So right now we see a couple things. First, we see our email response times on the weekend are just really slow comparatively. In some areas, it's a factor of 2x. So might be 10 hours during the week, but 20 hours or something on the weekend, which isn't a really great experience. Because if somebody emails you Friday night, doesn't really make their question less important. They still kind of need an answer. And then we find that because our weekend coverage isn't great, we go into every Monday with a backlog, which then impacts the first half of the week in terms of how we can help our customers there. So the part of the thought is that if we make a concerted push on weekends in the first part of the year, we'll probably be in a better situation 7 days a week, because every Monday won't suck in that sense.
Yeah, so on that same train of thought, Carolyn, with Buffer, y'all recently started doing weekend coverage, right? Is that something teams should be looking forward to? No, I won't say. Thinking about, I guess is a better way of saying, yeah, I'm going to look forward to that next year. But is that, something teams should be thinking about?
We had weekend coverage. We don't anymore.
I was going to say, wasn't it Weekend Warriors?
Yeah, we had 2 weekend warriors, and then they've both since moved to the week. Because they each put in a year and a half of doing weekends, and we're kind of I'm done. I want to have a normal person schedule, and we just haven't succeeded at hiring people who would be more excited to work weekends. We like kind of thought that those people would be out there, that like somebody would say, yeah, my partner works weekends. I would rather work weekends and have Tuesday and Wednesday off. And we just haven't succeeded at finding those people. So right now we're kind of doing weekends as a one person does a half day on a Tuesday and a half day on weekends, and then the rest is just volunteers. So yes, it is something that teams should be looking forward to, including ours, if that's like a priority. To quote, do we call you Andrew or Spittle?
Either way.
Okay.
My name's Andrew, whether it's high school, college, or automatic. I always end up going by Spittle. So,
Okay.
There's always more Andrews than there are Spittles.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how it breaks down in my head. Like, I know way too many Andrews, so it's just easier.
Okay.
It's like Chase Livingston. I always end up calling him Livingston.
Yeah. To quote Andrew Spittle, our biggest challenge is definitely Mondays, and the fact that people who email on a Friday night don't necessarily have a less important question, especially if you have one of those apps that people use on the weekends. Like, we have this small set of small business owners that has time to program tweets on the weekends. So for them, it's like, but when you get back to them on Monday, they're like too late. So this is something we're thinking about, and trying to sort of set bigger goals. And it's really, nothing's different about December other than it's kind of romantic to plan for the year and like look back and look forward. So we are trying to do that a little bit. But yeah, weekends is on our list.
So Jeff, what was that, a shock of surprise, face of like shock or surprise, or what was that earlier? You're muted and being attacked by Sherman. So.
I was shocked when Carolyn said that they no longer had weekend support, because I would completely agree with her hypothesis that there would have been a group, especially with Buffer's flexibility and reach in terms of audience, that there would have been people who would have just been lining up saying, yeah, that would actually work better for my life. But I think it's,
we have a lot of people who are willing to do it, but different.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting problem.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those. Basecamp had the same problem. We've got 3 people now that work on the weekends, one for each of the major time zones. Not major time zones, but I guess, what do you call that? I mean, like, we have
Continents.
Continents? Okay, that's the word. Thank you. Yeah, so we've got 3 people to do that, and it takes a special breed. Usually it's, like Carolyn mentioned, their spouse is probably working Saturday and Sunday, or maybe working a shifted week. That always helps out. I know when I was working at Jason's Deli, like, we all just rotated weekends, and it sucked, but that's just kind of how it went. But yeah, I mean, if you can hire weekend coverage, it's fantastic, because it eliminates that horrible Monday walking into 1,000 ticket kind of problem. When we were looking at moving 24/7, the biggest reason for doing that was because we wanted our reply times at Basecamp to get down below 30 minutes. And I won't say the easiest, but the best route for us to make that happen was to hire on weekend coverage and do 24/7 support. Because if someone's always answering tickets and there's never a backlog, then you never walk into a ticket that's been sitting there for 10 hours. You always walk into one that's only been there for maybe 30 minutes max. So it's just, if you want to make an impact on your response times, that's how you do it. You work your way toward 24/7 coverage as quickly as you can to kill that backlog.
It's so impressive.
It's just numbers. That's all it is at the end of the day. Just numbers.
Just numbers.
Just numbers.
It's definitely just people, right? Like, in terms of the 24/7 coverage, it's not just numbers. It's just people. Like, finding the people, managing the people, providing them the same experience as people who are in an office environment. Like, there's a lot of stuff there, and my hat goes off to people like Carolyn and Andrew who actually provide that experience, as I do not. So I am just couch watching. I'm backseat driving right now with my pontification.
You drove for a lot of years.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, and I want to say, when I say it's just numbers, like, it's a problem that can be achieved by looking at your numbers and figuring out, I need X amount of people on the weekend. Filling those spots is a challenge. like Andrew and Carolyn both pointed out, you've got to find the right person that can work those hours, and you might wade through. Like Carolyn said, there are plenty of people out there that will work some crazy, overnight shift or weekend shift or whatever just to work for your company, but that's not necessarily the people you want working for your company. So yeah, I mean, it was a challenge to just find those people. And hats off to Buffer, because their pool is probably a little bit bigger than our pool is when we started hiring for it. So it's a challenge that you should try to get done in 2016, but realize it is a challenge going into it. It's not just plug a person in and go.
So I think that Andrew kind of like focused in on automatics goals, but I think what I would describe is like from the third person, like abstracting out what Andrew described, what Spittle described, is like you take a look at your probably corporate objectives, and then I think something that's really important for a support team is not just, well, we're just here to just support, like that's why we're here. Instead, it's like how do we think about impacting these objectives that the company has? And I would say, like, if your company is of any size and stability and doesn't have objectives, I would push really hard to have them, because otherwise you are just showing up and supporting.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so what for listeners who don't have a company setting that kind of thing, like what's that look like at Wistia? What's an objective that Wistia as a company has set, and you're figuring out how to make that happen?
Sure. So we launched an enterprise plan in August, and right now it is growing. We'd like to grow it faster. We have some specific numbers around what that looks like. We have specific metrics around what leadership in that space looks like, beyond just number of plans, but also thought leadership. And that's the type of objective that's then handed to a specific team to figure out how to achieve. So I think that it's just really important for support team leads to have an idea of what those objectives are, and then kind of dive into what the assumptions around that are that can help them achieve, right, that it points them in the direction of what they need to do initiative-wise. So my guess is, Automatic, because they are a very like rigorous and critical thinking company, as we know from both Chase and Andrew, that they've thought about how they acquire customers and specific types of customers, and that's led them to the belief that they should have not only 24/7 support but also chat, and that chat, it increases the number of people who sign up, it increases their retention, it increases usage, whatever. All those initiatives should fall out of your objectives and your assumptions about your customers, and not like what Inc. magazine posts as like the support trends you should be adopting. I mean, you should experiment for sure, but I think that it's really important to say that it should be driven by some sort of objective, so that you're not just kind of like, yeah, well, let's go 24/7 and we'll just stretch people, to
burn everyone out.
18-hour shifts, because that's how we'll do it. Especially if you feel like you have to hire more people to get that done, you've got to tie it back to this corporate objective. And just saying the word corporate makes me want to vomit a little bit, but that's like the clearest way to get it across, I think.
Well, and that was actually, you mentioned the people side of things earlier, Jeff. Like, that was one of the things I felt we did a much better job on this year in terms of our goals, is like we knew we needed to hire more people. But in the past, we've kind of approached that as like setting a goal for just like with a blunt hammer, like, oh, more people. Whereas the second half of this year, we were like, all right, well, this is our goal. Like, if we want to democratize publishing, we need to have fully open, like, 24/7 support. Okay, well, to make 24/7 happen, we need, like, these people in these time zone regions who speak these languages. And then, like, that opens up so much clarity around the goals you set on the people side of things, because now you know, like, well, what kind of recruiting do we need to do? Do we need to translate job postings for certain language communities, things like that, that then really, like you said, with company objectives, they just sort of add clarity like all the way across, because now like the support team can understand like how the work they're doing feeds into broader goals.
That's awesome.
Carolyn, is it the same way at Buffer? Do you have those kind of objectives that your C-suite is setting and then kind of looking at you to implement for the support side?
It's so interesting that you should ask me that right now. The short answer is no.
I love this because now it's going to be the fun, like, what is buffer breaking?
Yeah. So the short answer is no, and not only that, but we've like sort of been without a vision recently, and so we've sort of been having a little bit of an identity question in the past couple of months. Like, okay, are we a company that has like a ton of smaller customers and we serve the bigger customers when what we have fits them, and like if not, that's okay, then we recommend them to go to another service? Or are we a company that like really pursues the enterprise level, and then by extension we like have sort of a trickle down effect of like creating a great product for the smaller companies? Or are we trying to serve both? And like that's like kind of the question that we've been trying to figure out. We don't exactly have an answer. And that's been absolutely hugely affecting, like, if to be honest, like it's stalled a whole bunch of conversations because we don't know exactly what we're running toward at the moment, I think. So Joel and Leo have kind of taken that on as their like key charge at the moment, is to like have those conversations and not necessarily like make a decision, but you know, get to a place where we feel like we can either, you know, set some goals, or, you know, is that, I mean, it's easy for me to set like a really micro goal. Okay, like we want to, you know, you can do it on a tactical level, like we want to not have any ticket wait longer than X number of minutes, or you can do it on kind of a philosophical level, like we want people to have a better experience, to be shocked by the support they get, or like X number of, you know, happy faces. Like you can do it, you can come at it 1,000 ways, and like we know what we're here to do. It's very implicit in the role and the conversations that we have, and it's the baseline for everything we do. But it's still really valuable to have like a big goal, and I think we don't have that at the moment. So we are sort of approaching it with the blunt, like more people and like better support and like improving numbers, hammers that Spindle referenced. So, and I think that's honestly, I think I'm doing a bad job because that's what we're doing right now. So one thing we're planning in the next week or so is just to like, okay, forget it. Like let's not worry too much about the company vision. Let's just do it. Let's put words to that understood, implicit, philosophical and numerical thing that we sort of all assume we are all on the same page about, but writing it down is kind of valuable. And that's, I hope, when we can say either, okay, we all agree on this and we're okay with it, or we really can't agree on it, or we're unclear, we're going to go one or two different directions with it based on what our expectations are. And one thing that we've kind of done at the moment is we have a team that's serving the business team, the customer success team, OSS team, and then we have a team that's serving the individual and free mobile customers. I'm sort of working with that team. So we're kind of doing both right now, and I don't think it's ultimately the best thing, because we have totally different goals, and we use totally different tools. Like everything about it is different. And if it ends up being, yes, we're really excited about supporting both of these customer groups, then great. But it does feel a little bit like we're just hedging our bets at the moment.
So action item for what you should be thinking about for 2016 is get clear on strategy and objectives that are driving the business.
Yeah.
I mean, It seems like you gave a great example of where they're not super clear, and it sounds like Andrew is super clear. And that was like really awesome to walk through both of your cases of like how it can lead to kind of stagnancy or like slowness because you don't want to make a decision that you feel like would affect like the really high level, and also how you can pull apart an individual objective and be like, if we want to achieve that objective, there's like 20 projects that we absolutely need to do. And then when someone comes in the room and they're like, we have to do this other thing, you're like not on the list of 20, like can't do it. And I think also something we've talked about a ton on this show is how we can make sure that support everywhere on the entire planet in every business doesn't get relegated to like a cost center. Oh, we added some more customers. Unfortunately, that means we have to hire a new support person. That sucks. I think the way to do that is that you always have support as part of like achieving your objective, right? If the head of support can go into a room and be like, this is bullshit, like I need this budget because if you want to hit this goal, this is what it takes, then they can have like a real substantive conversation as opposed to being like, hey, just your friendly support person.
Yeah.
Well, and I think,
living in shit because we've got a 40-hour backlog, like any help you could. Anyway.
I think doing that, Seth Godin has this really good piece from probably like 6 months back or so, where he talks about how like there's no universal what is like good customer support answer, because like what's the right kind of support team and culture for like a FedEx or a UPS is very different than Buffer, than Automatic, than like a telco. And he talks about how like for customer service, it's not right and wrong. It's about like, does it fit to those company goals, and does it help further and advance like that company's performance?
Yeah, and I will say I don't have that problem. Like, if I say I need more money, they're like, okay.
Yeah.
So I recognize that I'm in a unique situation as a team lead. Like, if I say I need 6 more people, they're like, great. But the challenge is getting 6 more people. We are getting better at like the little things, like, okay, recognizing we're going to need 6 more people at this time. So we know how long it takes us to hire and how long it takes that person to ramp up. Therefore, we can start looking for that person on next date. And like, okay, if we're not getting enough applicants, then we know we need to do these 6 things. That like we're getting better at like sort of tweaking and A/B testing and improving the little things. But I think we're kind of without a North Star at the moment, which I think Jeff's totally right. That's like probably the most important thing for us to figure out as a company.
So what do you do when you don't have a North Star like that? Like so if you get 3 months into 2016, 6 months into 2016, and you don't have a clear this is where you're going, do we just stick with like all the hedging our bets that Carolyn talked about, like doing this thing over here and then running over to this other team working on something completely different? Like, what do you do in that case?
Me?
Anybody.
Everybody's like, oh, but someone else talk.
I mean, we have.
Because I imagine if you're in that position for like a month or two, that's no big deal, right? I mean, especially at the end of the year, if you're not too busy, people are going to holidays. Like it's not as big of a deal going, all right, I don't really know what we should be doing right now, but I know that we should be offering faster support, and we should probably hire a person. But yeah, if you're like midway through the year and still don't have it, what do you do?
I mean, we've kind of created our own North Stars, and we know that if we're improving and reaching, I mean, we set realistic, reasonable goals that are going to improve the business. Like, so we kind of make our own local ones, but yeah, I'm not held. For example, right now, I'm not held accountable to the goals that we set. Like, nobody's saying, hey, explain to me why you set this goal and how that's going to support XYZ at the company. And I think that that's partially because my co-founders just fundamentally believe in customer service as a super important piece of the brand identity and success of the company, which is a luxury. So not being held accountable to that is fine in the sense of like they just believe that that's a positive for the business. But I think we do miss out on certain conversations and benchmarks that otherwise would be valuable.
Jeff, have you ever had to create your own North Star like that?
I think I don't think I've ever had to create it myself, but I think what Carolyn was just saying has been very true, where it wasn't that we didn't have a very explicit one, but what we wanted to do was create the best experience And I think especially when you're small, you can run a long way on we want to create the best experience. But then at some point, when you have goals that are very aggressive, what you need is some guidance on what you should prioritize. In order to make sure that people across the company are prioritizing the same thing. Because if marketing is pulling in this direction and support is pulling in this direction and product is pulling in a complete other direction, then customers get really confused and you don't make any progress, even though everyone can check the box of their goals. Everyone achieved their goals, but no real business value was created because it was so confusing. And that's what's very uniting about that North Star. But I feel very lucky to have only worked in parts of the company where I can directly affect the customer's experience, and that regardless of whether I have it or not, I feel like there's daily things that I know about that just should not be the way they are. They should be better.
Oh, sorry. I thought Andrew was going to jump in with something there. Some wise, automatic words.
I can't. I mean, we've had years in the past when we haven't really had like a strong sense of direction and support. I mean, I think if you're a support team that's looking at 2016 and going, I don't really know like what we can do. Like, I don't know what the right goal is. I don't know what the goals the company's setting, those sorts of things. I mean, I think the important piece about a North Star is that if it's a true North Star, you're really not able to change it. It's not something that can function as a North Star for your support team or your company as a whole for 2 years, and then you switch it. Like, in theory, it's something that's really foundational enough to what the company believes that it like guides you through a long-term period. But I think just on a more granular level, like if you don't know what goals to tackle in 2016, like if you get to the end of 2016, like the worst thing would be that you haven't tackled any goals. Like making some decision is better than just kind of abstaining and saying like, oh, we'll wait another year. I think the piece to just keep in mind is you don't want to set the wrong or like toxic goals for your team either. So just kind of like think about what are the incentives that the goals and decisions you make sort of necessitate. If you want to set faster response times, well, you probably want something around like it being looked at as coverage or customer satisfaction or something like that. So you don't create incentives like the sort of horror stories of call centers where people just like hang up every third call in order to keep the average call time low enough, right? Like,
that's a bad thing or that's a good thing?
I mean, it depends on whether you're trying to get out to your lunch break.
I mean, in my personal life, I have goals around call time, and so I hang up every third call.
So is that why I'm always getting cut off when I call you? It's just I'm the third person?
Yes, that's right.
One thing on that, just to add, I think just this, I know Jeff wants to say something, so just a super quick aside. I think one thing is that any goal can turn into a toxic goal if you chase it at any cost. So one conversation that we're just starting to have is like pairing goals together. Like never talk about response time without also talking about, like, don't talk about measuring response time and setting goals around response time unless we also talk about customer satisfaction or however you measure that, which is a whole separate conversation. But that way, the toxicity effect of chasing anything too far to the extreme can be mitigated a little bit. We haven't successfully done that yet, but it's just a conversation we're having. Did you want to say something, Jeff? I think I talked over you.
No, you didn't. But just stealing another thing from Andrew, just stealing more thunder. I do think another thing going into any new year, especially as a team lead, is to write down the decisions that you are not making at this moment. Like you need to make them, but you haven't made them, and it's probably because you might be missing some data or you're missing some input from like business needs, or you haven't shared it with the team and you feel like if you make one choice, like they're all going to mutiny or whatever. But I feel like that's the kind of stuff that's like booster fuel for a team into a new year, is making just a few of those decisions that everyone knows is hanging around, but no one like wants to bring up, and you're I feel like a lot of people, maybe this is a Wistia thing, but I feel like people in the past have been guilty of saying, like, I'm thinking about that or I'm doing deep thinking about that, when in reality they're just completely ignoring it as much as humanly possible. And if you write it down and you put it somewhere, you can't do that. So I feel like this is a good time of year to have that list out as well.
And real quick, you mentioned like for new team leads. Before the podcast, I talked with our group of happiness team leads because we've added probably 6 new team leads this year or so. And one of the things a couple of them mentioned was like for those decisions that you're not making, like in part ask yourself, am I avoiding making this decision because I'm afraid people on the team aren't going to like me if I make this decision, right? Mm-hmm. So a couple of our newer team leads talked about just having like sort of an epiphany moment where they realized their role was to really like ensure that the team was effective and performing well. It wasn't to be friends with everyone on the team. Like they would not be doing their job well if they were setting goals to like just keep everyone happy and perfect, and it's like kumbaya circle. You want to make sure that like the goals and what you're making decisions around are actually creating something of substance.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those where, thankfully, I'm not a team lead at this moment, so I don't have to make all these tough decisions like y'all are doing. But when I was managing the deli, one of the goals that we had was we wanted everybody to be basically trained up to. We had basically a junior, mid-range, and then senior kind of levels that you can consider yourself as an employee. And we wanted to make sure that all of our new employees were getting trained up as much as we can. And that meant that sometimes the employees that have been around for a while didn't get to work their favorite station, or didn't get to work their favorite day, or didn't get to work the rush or whatever it was. But that came at the benefit of having those newer employees trained up during those critical times. So yeah, if you're worried about being friends with everybody, then you're going to have to make different decisions than if you're worried about here's where I am and here's what I need to do to meet the goals that we set out. Now, we're not all heartless. We want to be friends with our teams and all that kind of thing, but it's not the priority, I guess, is a good way to phrase it.
Yeah. It's not the primary objective.
Yeah.
So that I'm going to steal more thunder from Chase now.
Just keep stealing.
Another thing that I really think people should be thinking about is going back to the team leads, is thinking about the ways that you can. Okay. Quick meta thing on team leads. Like your biggest impact. So now I'm going to steal more from Andrew. Your biggest impact is not in what you necessarily get done, but the leverage that you create through empowering your team and like helping them grow. And so thinking through the ways, if we go through the flow of like how we make them grow, I think there are 2 things that team leads should be thinking about into the new year. One is the processes by which you communicate stuff with your team. Like you make them aware of stuff you're thinking about, stuff that's really important. You get them up to the context that you have on the business, that kind of thing. And then the second thing is how you're going to recognize and make them feel special. Like anti-Spittle's earlier comment about Kumbaya, just how you're going to think about recognizing the right work and the right attributes in your team members. I think this is just a good time for resetting on some of that stuff, because it's really easy to push, especially in Q4 if you're really close to your goals. And it's good to just remember that the amount of time that you spend is minuscule compared to the amount of time that a few of your teammates will spend, if you can find good ways to remind yourself to recognize the awesome work they do. And then they just like take off. Like your leverage just goes like 100x really fast.
Yeah, I think it's the military that has the concept of like a leader of a platoon or whatever being like their primary role is a force multiplier, or like an accelerant for everything else the team does.
It's the barrel analogy, right?
Wait, the barrel analogy?
Like some people are bullets and some people are barrels. You want to be a barrel.
You said that, and I was like, what? Like wooden barrel? Like
well, I was thinking like Lord of the Rings, like barrels as escape things. I wasn't sure where that was going.
I'll work on using all the words in the sentence that's in my head.
And so I do want to point out that so you as a team lead, you're probably going to try to do everything, right? You're going to want to try to tackle every single objective that you can, and kind of be both the mentor and the friend and the lead and the force multiplier and everything else, all in this one little tiny package. And you're probably, if it's your first, if you're a new team lead, a new support manager, that kind of thing, it's going to take a while before you could even do that. But even for those of us that have been doing it for a while, there's a lot of benefit in being able to delegate out some of this stuff. There's a lot of benefit in being able to say, here's the three main objectives that we're going to accomplish in 2016. Person A is going to take this, person B is going to take this, person C is going to take that, and then let them do their work and just kind of support them. Like Jeff was mentioning, be there as their leverage and helping them do that. So when I was, again, I keep going back to the deli kind of metaphors because that's what that was, comes to mind first off. But there was a guy there who was basically in charge of team morale. Like, he was the guy that was always making sure our employees weren't getting burned out, that they were accomplishing their own private goals that they were setting along with goals that was making the company better. He was the one that was responsible for, down to little stuff like, if somebody did a great job, he would make sure that they were noticed about it. And if it was somebody's birthday, he would make sure everybody knew about it. And he was really, really good at it, and we let him do that. So you're going to have people like that on your team, assuming it's not just a team of you. You're going to have people like that on your team who you can take advantage of their skills if they're really good at things like that. So long way of saying, don't try to do everything yourself. It's really tempting. If you're like me, you want to be able to control everything, because do it your way, but that's just detrimental in the long run. All right, we're 40 minutes in. We try to keep these short. So is there anything else we want to throw in? We are on like a nice holiday break after this, so.
Jeff's looking pensive.
He is. I was waiting for that.
I just have a different challenge. Like, support is so hard because it never turns off. Like, it never turns off. You can never make the choice to just be like, all right, everybody, like, let's take some time and step back and think about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Like, that is not how it works.
And it's based a lot on other people's work. It's really hard to plan. That's the other reason. It's a really hard challenge. So I don't know how we get people that time to think big, but if one of the things that we want to do is make sure that people are making a lasting career out of, not only support, but just working on this stuff in general, we probably want to make sure we're giving them the opportunity to think big as well. So how we build that in, I do not know, and it probably depends on the company and the opportunity and all of that stuff, but yeah, I think that's important. It might, I probably already covered it, but it might be as simple as just inviting team members into the higher level discussions that you have occasionally so that they get context for what's being discussed and they realize how boring some of those meetings are that they think sound so cool. I think that stuff has a huge impact. So, I don't know. Take some time to think about it if you have the time to think about it.
Put it on the calendar. Block it out. I think I stole this idea from Buffer, of all places, but it was like, when you put something on the calendar like that, you're probably going to do it. I think the example they use, and I could just be mixing it up, it could be some other company. So if I'm like screwing some company out of like a kudos to y'all, I'm sorry. I thought it was Buffer. I don't know. But yeah, it was like, if you block out an hour Monday, Wednesday, Friday for going to the gym, you're probably going to go to the gym, as opposed to getting up and being like, oh, well, there's nothing on my calendar this morning, so I'm going to sit here and watch Netflix. So I think that's a lot of it is making sure to block out time on a shared team calendar where you can tell folks, hey, I know I'm usually answering email cases and that kind of thing right now, but for this next hour, I'm not. I'm working on this over here. And there's nothing wrong with just blocking out an hour or two saying, I want to think on some big thing. Like, it feels weird. You're not doing something that's measurable. Like, I'm not answering cases. I'm just sitting here thinking for an hour. But sometimes that's what you need.
Well, and so, Jeff's right in that support never turns off. Like, I sometimes refer to it as like the hamster wheel of support. You're just like always kind of running in place. But I think while support doesn't ever turn off, that doesn't mean that companies don't set the rules. Like there's no mandate that says you have to always have the contact form open. So we have an event on our calendar every year for our annual like all company meetup. Like we're a remote team. We spend 1 week a year together, 400 people in person. And we see that as important enough that we aren't on live chat and we partially close our contact form for support. So we make sure to handle like domain issues and refunds, but otherwise we kind of tell people like, hey, we're not around this week. We'll come back next week. So I think if you're at like a crisis point or feeling like you're really stressed, sometimes it's just helpful to remember that with goals and everything else, like you set the rules for your company. Like there's nobody, in most situations, there's nobody from the outside dictating exactly how it has to be.
Fair enough. Anything else? That was a good one. That one kind of just blew out all the things we were going to talk about. It was great. I loved it. So that's what we think on this one. Let us know what we got right, what we got wrong, all that fun stuff. I'm sure it's a good mix of things we got right and wrong. All you got to do, head over to supportops.co/contact. You can shoot us an email there, or you can tweet at us. We're at supportops on Twitter. All right, that wraps that up and brings us to really my favorite part of each and every week. It's this week's shoutouts. These are the things that are making us happy, so happy we want to shout them out and let you know you should be doing, buying, reading, whatever phrase, whatever verb, just insert there. Let's just run down the line. Andrew Spittle, what do you got?
I did not prepare for a shout.
Oh, okay. We'll give you time. I'm sorry. We'll run down the line the other way. All right, Jeff.
There we go.
Jeff, what do you got?
I'll try to go slow. First shout out is for Andrew Spittle. This was really fun and I learned a lot, and I appreciate having a really smart person on the show. It teaches me something really good. Second one is
Wait a second, do we not do that every week? Is that what you're saying?
I've already gotten all the knowledge out of you, Clemens. Although I have to say that now I'm going to just walk around thinking, what an advanced deli this guy worked at. They had like a deli cheerleader. What deli is this? It's amazing.
This is not a Subway.
It is,
dude. Number 3 Jason's Deli in the nation. When you're number 3 in the nation, you've got to do. It was crazy. It was like nothing I've ever walked into.
There you go. So I guess second shout out is to Chase Clemens for telling us all about that. But I guess the third one, which I'm sure someone has shouted out before, but I've never used, is Wunderlist. Do other people use that? I've been using Asana. So Wistia used Asana as a team about 2-3 years ago. And I was like the last holdout for years, I guess. 3 years probably. And I was interviewing a candidate, and they mentioned that they use Wunderlist and that it's amazing and that it has a great integration with Slack and all this stuff. And I was like, it can't be that great, but it is free. I'll try it. And it is so good. It's really, 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 really good. So Wunderlist is for like to-do management and that kind of stuff. And if you use any of those tools, keep using your tool. But if you have a problem with your existing tool, like it's slow, then I would try out Wunderlist.
Carolyn, what's your shout out?
First, I have a joke.
Yes. Bad joke. Bad joke
time.
Yeah, bad joke time.
What's the difference between a hippo and a Zippo?
I feel like Livingston. I'm just bad at these. I don't know.
This one's hard.
I don't know.
I give up.
One is really heavy and the other is a little lighter.
Oh.
That was a terrible reaction. I told you it was hard.
I like that. I'm going to use that for the at least a week with everybody that I run into, and be like, if they don't like it, it's Carolyn's joke.
Good. Okay, my shout out is if you watched last week, you know that I'm in the market for a new email app on my phone. And I explored Inbox by Gmail. I think I'm not quite smart enough for it, or I'm just not organized enough for it, or I'm too much of a control freak for it. But didn't exactly work for me. But one thing that I loved about it as a nomad is that they have this section for trips. Because what's the thing that you always like mark as unread and re-forward to yourself so it's at the top of your inbox when you're like showing up at the airport is your flights and your Airbnb and your this, that, and the other thing, your hotel confirmation. And Inbox by Gmail collects all those, organizes them by date, and just has it all for you. And that's pretty neat. So if that's really appealing to you, check it out.
Nice. So which one did you end up on?
Stay tuned.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun. We'll be thinking about it on the entire break.
Just to get Spittle some more time, I also went down that path of R&Ding 5 different apps.
What did you find?
So there's Outlook, which a bunch of people said is really good for the iPhone.
Heard that from Livingston.
There's the normal Gmail inbox. There's an app called Spark. And there's another app called Cloud Magic. And by the way, just shout out to the Twitter peeps who like hit me up with each and every one of those recommendations. I feel like email, you just have to go with speed. Like I really like some of the other features like the snooze and like all that stuff. But I before I ever used Mailbox, I had a system for how I did that. So I'm just gonna go back to for now. I'm keeping like 3 or 4 of them on my phone, but a bunch of them they try to do a bunch, but they're slow. So I went with speed, and right now it's Gmail inbox that's on my home row. Also, hi, person.
Person at the front door.
So this is why you gotta watch the YouTube sometimes, because
wait, there's no one in the hallway. This is weird.
We're gonna collect all this, and it's gonna be our horror, like found footage movie in a couple of years.
There we go.
All right, Andrew, you got enough time?
Yep. So I thought of one actually because for the last week I was out in New York on a work trip, which meant I had a couple long cross-the-country flights. And my shout-out is for actually the headphones I'm wearing, which are the Bose Quiet Comfort 25s or something. I had always thought that like Bose's reputation for noise-canceling headphones was kind of overrated, but they are amazing and phenomenal and make long flights or loud areas like airports so much nicer. Like I would actually say my experience with them in an airport and on a plane was basically equal, because in an airport they remove the CNN, they remove boarding notifications. Like it's actually good enough that like if you fall asleep with them on, like you will sleep through your boarding announcement. So set an alarm or something. But it just makes like a cross-country flight or a long layover so much more pleasant. And if you're an audiophile or something, they're not the most amazing sounding headphones, but they still sound great, and the noise canceling more than makes up for what they lack in comparison to like some more audiophile like headphones. So that's my shout out.
Nice. Mine this week, I don't know why I never tried it earlier, but medium.com, I finally tried it this week, and it's actually pretty cool. Like the writing is really good. I tried it because our company blog moved over to it, just because some of the experiments we had with it turned out really well. So shout out to them just for making the writing experience really great. And I don't know, I don't know if there's like one specific thing I can put my finger on, but it's just a really great experience as far as like onboarding, learning, and then starting to use it. That said, WordPress is still amazing and is still going to do the site for this show, so we're okay.
You can totally use both of them. I don't think we're like direct competitors in that sense.
No, not really. I mean, you already run like a quarter, almost a third of the web. Come on. Like, you've won at this point.
I feel like every time you say that stat, it goes slightly bigger.
It's 25.2%.
Wow.
There we go, 25.2.
Or something like that.
That's the stat we'll use until Andrew tells us there's a new stat.
Amazing.
For a while, I think for the foreseeable future, we're just going to say over a quarter. And we don't have to like update all of our press and marketing and stuff every time it like increments 0.8%.
Awesome. So that means this Hangout's in the books. We'll have show notes up shortly, supportops.co. Big thanks to our panel for just being as awesome as they are, and for Andrew for showing up with 6 hours notice. It really was like he just showed up. It was great.
Yeah, so, thanks for having me.
If you're feeling generous this week, do us a favor, share an episode around on Twitter, give us some love in iTunes if you want to do that, leave a rating, all that fun stuff. Programming note, we are off now for a holiday. So on television, they now call this winter finales and holiday hiatus. So I guess that's what we're going with. That sounds like a good thing. But yeah, it's one of those where I know for the Clemens household, we're on Baby Watch 2015, which is really fun. So, you know, Carolyn, I'll tell you when it happens. Don't worry.
That face.
Oh, and then Chase Livingston's on Baby Watch just after the New Year, sometime in January. So we don't know the exact date that the show will come back, but we do know it's probably going to happen around mid-January or so. So stay tuned for that. Keep an eye on the Twitter feed at SupportOps, and keep an eye on the site, supportops.co. We'll make sure that you know when the next live recording is. Other than that, thanks for sticking with us for this year. We'll see you again next year, and until we see you again, have an awesome week.